What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Raudeza Reviews. I'm Raudeza. And I gotta tell you guys, the internet, and particularly YouTube, is completely on fire with this whole new drama. Though, I will dispel a couple of myths right now. This is not really internet drama in terms of one creator going after another. It's really a question of whether or not one person basically committed fraud. Now, of course, very quickly things got tribal and people took sides. But the fact of the matter is that tax returns do not lie, okay? And when you start defrauding charitable organizations, yeah, that starts to be a very big deal. Not only is it a big deal with the IRS, but it is illegal. Yes, of course, I'm taking this time in the intro to talk about Gerard, the completionist. I know that people get very tribal and they have good memories with watching his videos. I personally never watched them. But everybody seems to think that he was the Mr. Rogers of the internet, and that's part of the problem. You see, the myth about YouTube in general, or just these influencers, that's so gross and cringe, is that because of the subscriber count, people seem to think that they're intelligent, that they're competent, and that they're actually good people, and that's clearly not the case. You know, I think about a day after this happened, I heard that call with Mudahar and Carl, and I gotta tell you, the completionist didn't do himself any favors with the lack of explanation and the excuses that he was giving, not to mention the fact that he seemed like he was more interested in his own self-image, and I don't think really understood the gravity of the situation. I'm not being naive, and I'm sure that he has spoken with lawyers because it finally has set into how much trouble he's in, but eventually he's going to have to make a statement and explain certain things. You cannot have $600,000 just sitting in an account for 10 years, not give out to charitable organizations, and not have the bullshit explanation that he had. So I want to apologize if I went a little bit longer in this intro to talk about the situation. I didn't want to make a video because Mudahar's video is pretty complete, and so is Carl's, and you should definitely check out those videos to get as much information as possible. And I hate reaction videos, and there seems like there's a bunch of lame-ass, lazy creators just reacting to much better videos. I mean, I cannot think of something more low energy than doing that, and I'm not going to do that, especially as something as serious as this, because this is not just something that is regulated to the internet. This is something that is a real life thing. It's illegal, and if you have in fact defrauded charitable organizations like it seems like is happening or has happened, then that's a very big deal. Because of course, until you make an official statement on this whole situation, you're being very literal to your namesake. You completely lied about raising funds for charitable organizations, you completely lied about where they were going to, and you completely kept it in one account for 10 years. Apparently you really are the completionist. Sorry guys, I know that it ate up again a lot of the intro, but I think it was important to talk about. And let's get into it. You already know who this character is. This is Hot Toys' version of Black Widow, the Snowsuit 1/6 scale figure. Let's take a closer look. Trust me when I tell you that I have a cacophony of Black Widow 1/6 scale figures. I have so many of them, but with every iteration they get better and better. The head sculpt here is really well done. This is probably the most accurate of Scarlett Johansson, and there have been a lot of them. I really like the hair sculpt, and again, I'm glad that it's sculpted and it's not like, you know, the actual hair. Very well done in terms of the imperfections in the skin. The braid looks really good, and of course the color palette is very well done. I gotta say, it's very striking to see how well sculpted this is, but there are a few problems with this head sculpt in terms of the overall movement, which I'll explain a little bit later, but it is impressive to note how lifelike this head sculpt is, and that's saying a lot from a Hot Toys figure. In terms of the overall design, the snowsuit is very unique because we are used to seeing the Black Widow in, you know, her namesake in a black costume. The white really does it justice. Now the textures here are done very well. I like the armor set especially. It's just done really nice, and there is some carbon scarring and a wash there. The bracelets are done very nicely as well, and they make a nice focal point. Now, one of the things that I'm really impressed about is the overall materials. Of course, this is a Hot Toys figure, so they're always very high end. But the textures, and I will mention it again, are done very well. Now, what's really impressive is the subtle focal point cues here, especially the black belt with the, of course, beautiful Black Widow insignia, and then that lends itself into the holsters themselves, and it makes a focal point because it really stands out offset against the white costume. And again, you get to really see the enhancements in those textures, and this is very well done. The lower section of this piece is just as impressive, and one of the things that I really like is obviously the modularization in the armor set, especially in the knee pads, and there are scuff marks there, those subtle little details like she had been, you know, kneeling or standing in the snow, which is really cool. The boots are sculpted very well and they're pretty intricate. I like the offset of the silver, and especially the zippers and the buckles are done really well. There's a little bit of a restriction with the movement, and I don't know how quite to feel about that, because I think if they try to do it a little bit more in terms of range, then they would have had to sacrifice some of the optics, but overall it's pretty well done. Now, of course, very similar to the Yelena figure, this does come with the extended batons, which has those two little points for the electric shock. And again, these are very, very detailed, especially in the color palette, and you have those subtle little hints of yellow, very similar to the previous figure, or the Belova figure, which is really nice. And then of course you have the very, very impressive pistols on the side, and I'm just going to get a little bit closer so that you can see exactly how well sculpted these are. They're fully functional in terms of the slide and releasing the magazine, so I think that's pretty cool that they did that. While not necessarily a requirement, I think I probably will mirror this piece in some way, because the sculpt on the reverse side is very intricate. I love her hair in this version of the Black Widow, but it also brings up an interesting thing about the movement. You see the little prongs on the side? Because they're standing out through the hair, you basically won't be able to move the head on this figure very much, and that's kind of a QC issue. It's a design flaw, but again, you know, it is what it is. Now, she does have some great fan service. You know, it's Scarlett Johansson, and then you see how she attaches to the base. And I will say again, be careful with the nut grabber, because it could stain the crotch area over time. Again, it's just a real shame about that limited range of movement on the actual head. Once again, I have to remark, I'm so glad that Hot Toys has gone with these kind of hexagonal bases, because again, while not perfect, they're a much better upgrade. And of course, on the actual base itself, it has this wonderful lithograph painted in white with the Black Widow logo. It does read Black Widow, and on the lip of the base in white letters, which really stands out pretty boldly, it does read Black Widow. Now, it should say snowsuit version, but I guess they couldn't fit that font on the lip of the base. Nevertheless, it still looks good. Now, this figure does come with additional accessories, and I don't know if I ever actually saw her use this in the film with this version, but whatever, we still have it. So we get two of the extended batons, which are actually flexible and have like a scythe blade coming out of each side of it. It's kind of grisly. And then of course you get a much more kind of intricate and upgraded version of the pistol, which has some kind of sight on the top, and then presumably some kind of laser aiming system on the bottom, which is really cool. It does still slide, and you can still release the mag, and I think it's really cool that Hot Toys does this. They don't have to do it, but it's just an extra sense of detail and realism, which I think is pretty cool. And of course, rounding out the last bit of accessories are 8 different hands for various poses and various functions. So each one of these hands does a pose, and each one of them serves a function depending on the weapon that you're going to be using, which is really cool. And the great thing about it is that because each of them serves a specific function, it means that there's not going to be any wear and tear over the years, and you're not going to mess up the actual weapon accessories that it comes with. I'm glad that Hot Toys is specializing a little bit more in the actual hands, because, you know, these figures do cost a lot. You know, it's very interesting because I really like this figure. I think it is so freaking cool. It's so unique. It's one of the most unique iterations of the Black Widow because it's the snowsuit. Though I can't necessarily give it my holy grail seal of approval, and I'm probably going to regret that, just like the Yelena figure, especially them together. Them together is definitely a holy grail piece set, because if you don't have both of them, you should get them because they're going to look really cool. But unfortunately, that one incredibly overlooked design flaw in the limitation of the range in terms of the movement and the head sculpt is really holding this figure back, and that's unfortunate. But nevertheless, this is a badass figure, and I definitely recommend it if you are a fan of the Black Widow. This is something you do need in your collection. Alright everybody, so that's my official review on Hot Toys version of the Black Widow, the snowsuit version, the 1/6 scale figure. As always, I thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next Raw Desert Reviews. And remember guys, get better role models. Don't just believe somebody or listen to what they say because of how many subscribers they have. That just means that they have much more, in fact millions of subscribers that they can kind of con out of money. Remember, just don't equate a subscriber count with how intelligent and how morally compassed someone is. I'm just saying.